Hey everybody, it's Dana. Welcome back to my YouTube channel and blog. Today I'm going to share with you a different way to do embossing on your cards. We are going to stamp out this image here. This is called Elegant Leaves from Sunny Studio. I absolutely love this stamp set. And we're going to use an embossing powder that is sticky as well as a makeup palette. I know you're thinking like, what are we doing here? But it turns out to be so cool. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to grab myself a piece of craft paper because I love the way that this looked when I tried it out, and I think it's just beautiful. Now I already have my stamp on an acrylic block, and I'm going to be using Versamark today. I'm going to ask you guys to kind of work with me today. I'm actually fighting a really bad cold, so I'm trying not to sound very nasally, but I can't help it. I'm just trying to get over this stinking cold. Okay, so I went ahead and put down a scrap piece of paper, and I also have a lint Swiffer wipe to get the static off of this paper. So that's one thing you need to make sure that you do is remove any static that you have from your paper. Next, I'm just going to stamp regularly as if I was just stamping with regular ink or Versamark here, as if I was just going to go ahead and emboss. There's no difference on how you do this part. I do want to have the design kind of coming from the corner, so I'm going to stamp off. Remember, I tell you that a lot of the times if you're making a background, to make sure your image runs off the paper so it doesn't just look like the image is floating. And I'm going to come in and stamp another one. Now, I'm not going to stamp all over this. I kind of like to do it in like layers so I can see where I'm stamping. So as you can see, I've stamped just a few of them right in that corner. And now I'm going to bring in that Ranger sticky embossing powder. Now, what's so cool about this embossing powder is once you heat it up, it becomes very tacky. So it's not like regular embossing powder where it just kind of like fades into the paper. This, once you heat it, it becomes tacky, and that is going to allow you to use the makeup eyeshadow on this. You can even do it with blush, you guys. I've tried it with blush too, and it's actually fabulous. So any kind of powder or mica, you can get, pick up cheap makeup from the dollar store. So it's such a really cool technique. Now, since I have the powder on there, I can kind of see where those leaves are. And that's the reason why I like kind of stop, put on the powder. So I'm not double stamping over one of my images. And you can also use this same way if you're just going to do regular embossing as well. Just put down some embossing powder so you can kind of see where you are and you're not double stamping over anything. Excuse my head, I'm kind of like standing up over it. So I'm just making sure that I get them as close as possible, but not touching. So go ahead and press down that last one. And then again, I can go ahead and grab that powder and sprinkle it on there. Now you can heat set between these, but this is some thinner craft paper, so I don't want it to warp too bad. So that's why I'm going to stamp a few of them first before I go ahead and bring in my heat tool. Now, since I have that, and you'll see that I just keep pouring this same powder back in the jar, but I will have to tell you this powder like expands in the jar when you go to pour it back in. So I'm actually going to take this container and pour it into a larger vessel in order to keep it from getting all over my desk. I'm going to do it one more time, but you can see once you put the powder on there, you can really see your design come to life, and you'll know that you're not doing that over stamping. Now, if you wanted to do this in fun colors of chalk, you can do that as well because this is going to be really sticky. So one more time, I'll bring back in that embossing powder and I'm going to stamp right in this corner. Again, letting that design run off the paper. Remember, because we want that design to look like it was pulled out of a paper pack. And anytime you see a paper pack that has designer paper in it, you're going to notice that the design runs off the paper. One more time, I'll go ahead and hit with that powder, and you can see I'm lightly tapping that powder off. I'm not like flicking it like I normally would regular embossing powder. I'm just tapping it so that I leave the majority of that powder on on the image. If you tap too hard, you will actually knock all the powder off. All right, now it's time to heat set. The biggest things I can tell you about this, you guys, is to make sure your heat gun is hot. I mean, screeching hot before you bring this to this embossing powder. You do not want to overheat this embossing powder. So you'll see that I'm going to bring it to the card, and soon as I start to see it turn white, I'm going to pull that heat off. And the reason you want to do that is because if you overheat this, it will not be sticky anymore. So one, make sure your heat gun is really hot. Once you see it turn white or clear, shiny, then you take the heat off of it. So you'll see a couple times like I move my gun out of the way, and that is to make sure that when this dries, it stays sticky. So you can kind of see it's just like glossy on there, and you can kind of see the texture of it. That's what you want. If you've heated it for too long, it's going to go flat. All right, now I'm going to bring in this makeup palette. Now, I used to wear a ton of eyeshadow when I used to work, mostly neutral colors, not some of these happy colors. But I don't work anymore. I don't work outside my home. So I'm going to put this palette to good use. So I have a tiny little makeup brush, and all I'm going to do is dab it into some of the color. And look at that, you guys. I'm getting these fantastic fall colors that I might not have been able to achieve this kind of blend if I was doing it with inks. And it's so easy. You see, I'm not rubbing hard. I'm just tapping off any excess onto that little Swiffer and pulling that color in. Now you can go absolutely nuts with this. It is such a fun way to add a little bit different dimension to your cards. So now I'm going to go into that green. I'm going to put some of that down in certain areas, and then I'm going to go with a darker green. So this just happens to be such an easy way to use a tool, i.e. your makeup, that you would not have normally thought to use on a card. So I'm lightly just going in and mixing some of the colors together, and it ends up to be absolutely gorgeous. I'm going to go one more into that like nice burgundy color, and I'm really just trying to stick with fall colors, something I would see in nature. So I'm not going to go for like the yellows and the blues, but I will go for like the burnt oranges, the browns, the burgundies, the coppery colors. And look how easy that was. Now, the reason a lot of this makeup is not sticking to the cardstock is because I used that Swiffer beforehand. So now I'm just going to fold the Swiffer back over and then just run it against my card, and it will knock off any of that extra makeup. So gently rub that across, and look how gorgeous this is. Look at the color variation. Because the heat embossing powder or the embossing powder stays kind of chunky, you actually feel the texture of the leaves as well. So it's not flat, you can feel it. Next, we're going to go in and put in a sentiment. I'm using the Grateful Sentiment from the same stamp set because I love the font on this. You guys have heard me say before, I'm a font snob, and I want to make sure I put on the sentiment before I do anything else to this card. So I will bring in my mini MISTI just to make sure that I line up my sentiment correctly. At this point, I really don't want to mess up this card. So I'm going to go ahead and line that up. Excuse my head again. It's a curly day at the house. Just want to make sure I get that in place because I'm loving the leaves so much. I think I want to add more. So I do want to stamp that sentiment first. Now I am going to do the same exact thing here, you guys. I'm going to use my Versamark. Now, if you wanted to, you could use your Versamark and put regular embossing powder over it if you wanted to. Let's say you had copper embossing powder. You can use it, or you can use black or white, but I want it to match the colors of my leaves. So I'll gently tap that down into place, making sure I get a really good impression on the first time. I can go ahead and pull that out. And again, I'm going to grab that sticky embossing powder and sprinkle that right over the sentiment. Now, the thing with this, the biggest suggestion I can say is don't over push on your sentiment because you're kind of get like bleed outlines. So just tap, 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 just to make sure that you have this sentiment there. and then don't press any harder because you want the sentiment to be really, really crisp. Again, I'll just go ahead and pour that sticky embossing powder back into that jar. Again, I need to move this to another jar because I find that a lot of it is sticking to the paper, so I'm wasting it, and we could not have that in our craft room. I'll use my little Swiffer to get up all that embossing off my mat so I don't heat set that onto my mat. And then I can go ahead and start heating up my gun again. Again, you want this to be really hot before you bring it to your card. So one more time, I'll go ahead and heat that. As soon as I see it turn clear, off the heat goes. That is it. You can see how fast that happened. So once that is done, I'll bring in my makeup palette one more time. And I'm going to grab one of the darker colors because I want my sentiment to stand out. So I'm going to go back into that burgundy color. It's almost like a really, really deep purple, and rub over. And look how the sentiment comes to life. Look how gorgeous that is. So simple to do. So I'm just gently going over it very lightly. I'm not like scrubbing it in. I'm not scrubbing a pot on this. I'm just gently going over it to lay down that color. And then look how beautiful the sentiment comes out. Now we're sitting here thinking, I think I want to add some more. So I'm going to go ahead and finish off this panel with adding a couple more leaves. Now I went ahead and I sped up this process because obviously you already saw me do it in like real time. But I just wanted to share with you and show you how easy it is to do all this on a card panel. And if you make multiples of this, it would be perfect for holiday cards. So very quickly with the heat gun, and again, I'm just putting down that makeup and it comes together really, really fast. Okay, now since this is done, I do want to trim down this panel just a little bit because I am going to put it on a white card base. So I'm using my waffle flower rectangle dies here. These are the A2 size, I believe. And then I'm going to run this through my die cut machine. Once I run it through my die cut machine, I can go ahead and get ready to prepare this card. But look how gorgeous those leaves look. And it was so little effort. And again, if you have a ton of makeup or if you just go out and buy some, it's really inexpensive. And it just gives you another way to kind of add some more color to your cards. I have here my EK Success tool. This is what I use to score my cards. And then I'll grab my other bone folder, which is my Teflon bone folder, which I absolutely love. And I'll go ahead and get that white card base down. Now, I don't want to add a lot to this card because I don't want anything to take away from those gorgeous leaves. But I do want to have a nice little white border around it. I will go ahead and use my regular ATG gun to go ahead and put this down. Now, I would tell you, if you don't heat this cardstock a lot, then you're not going to have a lot of warping. So remember, get the heat gun really, really hot, bring it to the paper, pull it off, bring it to the paper, pull it off, and you will not have a lot of warping with your paper. All right, I'll bring in my card panel, kind of line it up on my grid, and then I can go ahead and place that down. So if you guys have any techniques that you know of using this sticky embossing powder, I would love to hear it. I would love to hear it. Now, I did think, Dana Joy, you know how you are, and you do like to have a little bit of dash lines. I'm going to go ahead and put some dash lines on this. So this is a jelly roll. This is a number 10.10 white jelly roll. I just felt the need to bring some of that white card base up to the top of this card. Now, again, there's not a lot to this, so it's really not going to distract away from the leaves. It's just going to give me one more element to put on the card. And again, I just want to pull some of that white onto the top of this card. Now, anybody who watches my videos knows I like to put a little bit of something, something on my card. So I am going to grab out just a few of some metallic gold confetti. I'm just going to use a few of these. I'm not going to go crazy, but it's just going to give my card a little bit more of a design element. Again, I'm not trying to distract from the leaves, but this was just looking a little bit too clean and simple for me. So I'm just going to pick out a few of them and put them on the card, and I'm going to use odd numbers. And then I'll use my pick tool and my Hero Arts glue and go ahead and press those down into place. All right, that is totally going to wrap up today's video. Please make sure to leave a comment below and let me know what you use your sticky embossing powder for. I would love to hear your feedback on this. And if you hadn't had a chance to subscribe, make sure and do that and hit that bell so you know when my next video is up. All right, everybody, that is a wrap on this beautiful card. Please make sure if you make a card, tag me so I can see it. Look how gorgeous this is. All right, everybody, until next time, have a great day, and I'll see you in another video soon. Bye-bye.